This is our fourth session with Joe out wandering around somewhere. Actually, he's doing a meeting for the second consecutive week, and should be back and ready to go on Sunday. So we're going to do one more study. And what we have done in the first three studies that I've been with you, we looked at first from 1 Peter chapter 5, the first 4 verses. We had several not but statements. And we looked at that, first of all, as Brad referred to in his prayer, from the chief shepherd's standpoint. What did the chief shepherd, Jesus himself, do that set the example for shepherding? And looked at that. Then, on last Wednesday night, we looked at it from the standpoint of the more literal application, how it's written in 1 Peter chapter 5, to the elders who serve within a local congregation, and the not but statements as it applies to them. Not this way, but this way, 3 different times, and showing some do's and don'ts for elders in the congregation as far as shepherding the sheep. And tonight we're going to look at something a little bit beyond just shepherding, but we'll get to that in just a minute. This past Sunday morning we did the flip side of that. Instead of talking about Jesus and the things that he does over his sheep, and the elders in the congregation, the things that they do with the sheep of a local congregation, we looked at it from the other direction. Sunday morning we looked at the responsibilities that the sheep have toward the chief shepherd himself. And there's many, many passages. We looked at a number of them. But there was one point that it didn't get to on Sunday morning, and I want to briefly look at that. And that's going to also be kind of a segue for tonight, where we're going to be talking about the obligations or responsibilities that the sheep in a local congregation have to the shepherds of that congregation. And we'll take a look at some of that. Again, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to speak right up as we look at this. The one thing that I did not get to last week, if you turn to 1 Peter 2, we've looked at several verses there. The last verse of the chapter we looked at briefly on Sunday. For you are straying like sheep, there's our analogy, straying like sheep, but have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Okay? And we looked at, for example, the example of the prodigal son from Luke chapter 15. He strayed away, but when he came to himself, he said, I've got to go back. And he returned. He didn't say, I'm going to sit here and wait till my dad comes and rescues me. He knew he needed to take the action to return and show the penitence that was necessary to be accepted back. And as was pointed out on Sunday, the father was there waiting and watching for him, receiving him back with open arms. And of course the application for us is to our Father who is willing to accept us. He's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. We talked about that on Sunday. Now, you're straying like sheep, he said, but you've now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. We looked at the shepherd part of that. We didn't look so much at the overseer part. If you're reading from the King James, it says shepherd and bishop of your souls. And we'll look at that a little bit more in depth in just a minute. Jesus is referred to.
What verse are you reading?
I'm sorry?
What verse are you reading?
This is verse 25, last verse of chapter 2. If I said the wrong thing, I apologize. Yeah. 1 Peter 2:25, last verse. You've now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Jesus, the chief shepherd, is not just the chief shepherd guiding and leading the flock. He's also the overseer of souls. And that's an important concept to get. And we're going to look at that briefly and look at that then as it applies to elders in a local congregation and the members' responsibility toward them. The overseer, or the bishop, the chief overseer, I guess we could say, is of course the Lord himself. Now, overseer comes, you can't talk about that without the concept of understanding that the overseer is the one that is in charge. And we will go into all the nuances of that. So clearly the Lord oversees the souls, and he's in a position where those under his rule or oversight are to be subject to him. And then we have verses like Hebrews 5 and verse 9. Jesus became the author of eternal salvation to all those who what? When you get to 5 and 9, the author of eternal salvation to all those who
obey.
Yes, obey him. Yeah. That verse would be hard to misunderstand, wouldn't it? He's the author of eternal salvation to all those who obey him. What about those who don't obey him? He's not the author of their eternal salvation. Pretty straightforward. Luke 6, verse 46, Jesus, in a discourse there, said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things that I say? He's in a position of authority, and he said, I am saying things, you do them. Again, very simple. When he says, why do you call me Lord, Lord? The word Lord there, as it's used in Scripture, is generally just referring to someone who is considered a master or a ruler. And the ruler, in this case, as the Lord, the overseer of our souls, he's the ruler, and he makes the rules. And he said, why do you even call me Lord or ruler if you're not going to do what I say? Again, important concepts to remember. The sheep not only have a duty to follow the lead of the shepherd, but also to obey the rules of the overseer, to be in submission to that. Any comments about that before we move on? Okay. Now, going into tonight about the sheep toward the elders in the congregation, the elders in the congregation, as we've already said, are under the authority of the chief shepherd. We've said that before, and please don't misunderstand that. The elders of a congregation have no authority whatsoever outside of the authority that's been given to them by the chief shepherd and the overseer of the souls. We, as elders, there is authority given, but it's delegated authority. And the difference, there's several differences. One is that the overseer of the souls, the chief shepherd, makes the rules. The overseers in the local congregation do not make rules. Anyone disagree with that? It's quite a distinction. They're under the authority of the chief shepherd. Let's look for just a second. We talk about elders, we talk about shepherds, and so forth. There are 6 words that in the English language that are used to talk about elders. Not all of them are in the various English translations, but there are 6 words in 3 pairs One is, of course, what we say most of all. It's talking about elders. Elders in local congregation. You know what the companion word to that is? An elder is a presbyter. You probably heard of presbytery. As a matter of fact, actually in 1 Timothy chapter 4, where Paul's talking to Timothy, he says, nourish the gift that's given to you by the laying on of the presbytery. And most of the newer translations translate that the council of elders. And so, are we really talking about a council of elders? Well, the Bible does. But elder and presbyter, presbyter is just a word that means an elderly or an aged person. Okay, so that gives one aspect of the people who serve in that office. Shepherds, we talk about shepherds. What's the companion word to shepherd? And the answer is pastor. Okay, we're talking about this is very widely misunderstood in the religious world as what a pastor is. A pastor is just another word for shepherd. We have a pastoral setting. Sometimes you have a painting of a pastoral setting, and a lot of times that's going to be a painting showing a shepherd out taking care of the sheep that are grazing. Shepherd and pastor go together. Then we have overseer, what we talked about with Jesus, and then we're going to talk about with the elders. And the companion word for overseer is bishop. Okay. A lot of times the King James, the authorized version, will use the word bishop, but it's one who oversees or superintends in some sort of task or some sort of arrangement. And elders, depending on how you look at them, they're either elderly men, or they're shepherding men, or they're overseeing men. And they have to fit all of those various things. Okay, so the elders' function is both shepherds and overseers. Elders, shepherds, and overseers. Okay, now, Jesus is said to be the shepherd and bishop, or shepherd and overseer of our souls. Elders, to some extent, the same can be said about them. We're going to talk about shepherding and overseeing and the sheep's responsibilities and obligations toward elders in a local congregation. If you look at, turn to Hebrews chapter 13, if you would. There's one chapter, chapter 13 in Hebrews, that speaks to our responsibility toward the elders, both in their functions as shepherds and as overseers. Okay? Someone, if you would, read verse 7 of chapter 13 of Hebrews.
Remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow, considering the outcome of their conduct.
Okay. Now, when he says to remember them, he doesn't mean like, oh, I almost forgot about old brother so-and-so. Now I remember. That's not what he means by remember. Just remember is to be mindful of. Be mindful of your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their faith and imitate their faith. So we follow or imitate their faith. That's looking at an elder in a local congregation in the aspect of him being a shepherd. What do sheep do with the shepherd? They follow the shepherd, do they not? It says, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. So we're imitating their faith or following their faith. And so that looks at the elder in his role in a local congregation as a shepherd. The sheep do the following in the same way that they follow the chief shepherd. Not because of the same line of authority, but they are to be followed. And we're going to notice some more verses about that. Now, same chapter, let's look at verse 17. Someone read verse 17, please.
Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they watch over your souls as those who will give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with grief, for this would be unprofitable for you.
Okay. The first part of that verse, again, is very straightforward. It'd be hard to misunderstand that. Obey your leaders and submit to them. Now, this is looking at the elder and the elder's role as an overseer, one who superintends the flock. And in verse 17, he's saying, the way this is characterized here is they're keeping watch over your souls. I don't know what your reaction to that is, but to my reaction to that, from my perspective, is that's kind of scary. I don't mean in a bad way, horribly scary. So it makes me tremble in my boots, because elders are said to watch, that they are watching over the souls of those that are under their oversight. I can't imagine a more awesome responsibility. And so this is the elder's role as superintendent or overseer or bishop. And the obligation, again, from what we're looking at tonight, is what are the sheep's responsibilities? Obey and submit. Now, what does it mean for a wife to submit to her husband? If a wife submits to her husband, does she say, I'm going to do what you say, but I'm not going to like it? Is that submission? Is that subordinating your will? That's what we're talking about. Subordinating your will to the will of someone else. Well, let's get away from wives and husbands. The sheep in a congregation are to obey and to submit. They realize that their will is to be subordinated to the will of those who are overseeing them in the congregation, the elders. Now, again, don't misunderstand. That doesn't mean if an elder tells you to go jump off a cliff somewhere, that, well, I have to submit to them, I have to obey them. That's all within the context of people who are watching over our souls. To be in submission and to say, you know, I probably wouldn't have done it that way if it were me, but the elders have decided to do it a different way, and my role is to obey and submit. Phil, did you have?
As far as the wives go, I think the husband would want to not have your wife submit because they have to, but because they want to. You know, that's the attitude you should have.
Right.
This verse in 17, I see that as it's coming from an apostle. I see it as a direct command. It's saying obey your leaders. That's a command to me.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
that's
it's
a lot
not a
of,
suggestion, is it?
go ahead. There's a lot packed in there, that obeying your leaders, because there's a lot of responsibility on their part, and they have to give an account, and I think they'll be held more higher regard to their actions than anyone else.
Right. He says, like you say, as those who will have to give an account, let them do this with joy and not with groaning. Why? For that would be of no advantage to you. You're going to come out on the losing end of this if they're having to answer about a member of the local congregation and have to do it with grief.
I've seen members complain about the elders, or they give them a hard time, and if you're doing that, you need to rethink what you're doing, because You're violating the direct command here.
Yeah, that's right. Again, it is a direct command, and it's not hard to understand it either. Really. Any other comments about that? Okay, so elder as a shepherd and elder as an overseer. Jamie?
Okay, I don't know if this was brought. Okay, so if an elder is doing something wrong, do we have the right to go to that elder personally and talk to them? I was looking for that verse.
That's
I
a
cannot
great
find it.
question, and we're gonna answer that in just a few minutes.
I'm jumping ahead, okay.
Okay. No, but that's good. And we're gonna talk about a verse that addresses that very.
I've been looking for the verse.
Okay, we're gonna talk about it here in just a minute. Okay, shepherds and overseers. We're mindful of them, we imitate their faith as sheep, and then we obey and submit to their oversight. Okay, turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, if you would. In verse 12, Paul says, "We ask you, brothers, to respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love because of their work." Okay, so he's saying, respect those who are over you in the Lord. Some translations may use a different word than respect. Someone have a different word there, to respect?
Appreciate.
Appreciate, okay. We know what that means. We know what disrespectful means, don't we? Well, respect is the opposite of that, and appreciate those who are over us in the Lord, okay? And then what else? Esteem them. Esteem means to hold someone or something in high regard. That's putting something up on a pedestal. That's something that I really look up to. I esteem someone, that's holding someone in high regard. In love because of what?
The work.
The work. And we'll get on a long discussion about that. This is not playtime. This is serious business, and it's work. And he says, you need to respect them and you need to esteem them because of the work. And we're going to get, Janie, in just a minute to your verse that talks about some things, if things go in a little bit different direction. Any other comments about that? These are all obligations or responsibilities of the sheep in the congregation toward the shepherds or overseers in that congregation. It's interesting, he said in verse 12, I have read over this for years, and I was putting the comma in my head in the wrong place. And I'll tell you what I mean. To respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord. And then the way I was reading it, and to admonish you to esteem them very highly in love. That's not the way that's reading. Respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you. And we can put a period right there. Who's doing the admonishing here? The elders. Okay? He said respect and esteem people that are admonishing you. Now, admonish means to warn somebody or to caution somebody. Usually it's associated with doing it in a gentle way. And it's much more gentle than the concept of rebuking someone, which is much, usually carries with that are much more forceful and not in as gentle a way as possible. When Paul withstood Peter to his face about the things that Peter was getting caught up in with regard to Jewish and Gentile brethren, when he said, I withstood him to the face, do you think that was a gentle admonition Or do you think that was a rebuke? It sure seems like it was a rebuke. He said, I did it in front of everyone. But the point is that in this case, we're talking about an elder at times needs to, in a general way, warn someone or caution someone. Now, the point that I would make in this is, and this goes back to what we looked at before about elders watching over our souls. I cannot think of any reason why a member of a congregation, if you're talking about spiritual things, we're not talking about what football team they like or something like that, but we're talking about spiritual things. I cannot see of any reason why a member of a congregation could ever say to an elder, that's none of your business. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is their business. Because they've got to give an account. We have to give an account. And so if an elder sees something in a member and gently warns them or cautions them and say, be careful, that may lead you down a path that's going to be hard for you to come back from. Or whatever they say in a word of warning or caution, the person, instead of saying, well, that's none of your business, is supposed to respect them and esteem them highly. Now, that's not an easy thing to do sometimes. If a person's pointing out something that I may be doing and they're warning me about that or cautioning me, but the command is still respect and esteem. That's just the way it's supposed to work. It doesn't always work that way. And unfortunately, we see that sometimes. The person says, I'm out of here. I'm going to go somewhere else and do what I want to do. Yes.
This verse in Galatians 6:1 may be aligned with what you're talking about. It says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in the spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you be tempted.
That's right. In spirit of gentleness. And considering yourself, in other words, if I'm warning someone about some behavior or cautioning them, be careful about this, whatever, I need to realize that might be me if I get caught up in the same thing. And do it in that spirit of gentleness. With the outcome, obviously, the attempted outcome would be to bring that brother or sister back from behavior that would not be good for their soul. And an elder has to use judgment about doing that. You know, do you approach someone the first time they ever do something that might be a little bit off the beaten path? There's judgment that has to be used, but the admonition has to come sometimes at some point instead of just letting the person wander off.
If you see someone,
I don't want to get ahead of you, but are you going to bring up the analogy of the watchman in Ezekiel 33? Or?
No, you go ahead.
Well, although that's not talking about elders specifically because it's an Old Testament passage, it is talking about what God expects of leadership. And when he puts someone in a position of authority, in Ezekiel 33, he terms them a watchman. And he says, when I say to the wicked, O wicked man, you shall surely die, and if you do not speak a warning to the wicked man from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. So that's
the same concept.
It's the same concept. He goes on in the next verse, he says, nevertheless, if you do warn the wicked man to turn from his way, and he does not turn from his way, and he shall die in his iniquity, but you have delivered your soul. So the idea there is that whoever's in charge, whether it's a watchman, whether it's an elder, whatever, you have a responsibility to say something if you see something.
Right.
And if you don't, then it's on us.
And elders are to be watchmen. We just looked at the verse that says, they watch for our souls. That's the same concept. that's a good point.
You know, David, you know, if you're in a circumstance where you're in a restaurant and you see a brother having a meal and there's a pitcher of beer on the table, and it's gonna take a little courage for you to either do something right then or wait till later, ask him, you know, like,
Well,
what do you
yeah,
do?
and I think that's a judgment call.
that's hard to do that, yeah.
Now, sometimes, some use of discretion would be good. Instead of embarrassing the person in front of a whole bunch of people, take a time when you can say, I need to talk to you about something. And use it for,
Just a personal thing. I drug a guy out of a bar one time. I was,
and why were you in the bar?
I saw him go in there. Saw one of and he was a member of the congregation, and I was I was an elder in this congregation. Now he's long gone, but I saw him walk into a bar, and I had a decision I had to make. You know, I saw him go in there,
Yeah.
and so I pulled my truck over and I walked in there and said, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and this is not a pun I intend, but he looked at me very sheepishly.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes that's what's needed, is take immediate, direct action to say, like you said, what were you thinking? I mean, are you serious? What were you thinking?
They might come back with an argument and said, you know, get out of my way and mind your own business, you know, I mean, that's when you need to calm down. Don't let yourself get caught up in that.
Right. But the answer to that is, an elder says, this is my business.
Right.
But you can use, you can say it sometimes in a softer way than that. All right, Jamie, your verse, 1 Timothy 5:19. We're just about out of time. I want to read that very quickly. 1 Timothy 5:19 says, do not admit a charge against an elder except on the evidence of 2 or 3 what? Witnesses. Not on the evidence of 2 or 3 accusers. He said, do not accept it except on the basis of 2 or 3 witnesses. People who saw what happened and say, yes, I was there, I saw it, and I can verify that that's what happened. And I've seen over the years, sometimes people get a bee in their bonnet toward an elder or a group of elders, and they start floating rumors around about, you know, I'm not sure about whether that person's really doing what they need to be doing and so forth. And it becomes like an accusation. He said, don't you go there unless you have 2 or 3 witnesses that say, I witnessed this person doing wrong. But if you have that, what does he say in the next verse?
Rebuke in the presence of all.
Yeah. As for those who persist in sin, rebuke them in the presence of all. That's what we talked about earlier. This is not just admonish them, but rebuke them in front of everybody if they keep on sinning. So that doesn't give an elder license to just do whatever they want to do and just live however they want to live. If it can be verified from witnesses that an elder is leading an ungodly life, then you rebuke them. Now, the verse that I think you were alluding to earlier, Janie, is if you have aught against your brother, go to him and talk to him. Okay, I think this is a little bit different than that, because it's not like you've done something bad to me, and I need to talk to you about that. This is not just something you've done to me. This is something that an elder, let's say in this case, has done that's clearly ungodly living. Not something that they hurt my feelings. It's that they've done something that is clearly ungodly, and they are subject to rebuke.
Also, a question real quick.
Okay.
So that's in Matthew. So if an elder does something privately and you see it, do you go follow Matthew, or do you go back to 1 Timothy
Well,
with 3 people?
when he says,
One.
what's implied there in 19 and 20 is, as for those who persist in sin, rebuke them in the presence of all. That's implied that first you've talked to that person
Already talked
about them.
Okay.
And if they persist in sin, the verse says, then rebuke them before all. Give me 60 seconds, please, and I'll give one last point. Because it's a point that actually the elders are working on a packet of information to give out to new members who affiliate with this congregation. Okay, so we have a lot of things in it. I won't go into all of that, but some of it talks about the elders' responsibility toward members in the church. And that's very much needed. And also it talks about members in the church's responsibility toward elders. And one of the points that's made in that is from 1 Timothy 5:17 to 18. It says, if anyone's sick, let him call for the elders of the church. And we won't get into everything about whether that sick means physical sickness or spiritual sickness or whatever. But the general principle is, if a member has something that's a problem or a concern, they just keep it to themselves until finally they're tired of things and they wander off to another place, right? No, he says absolutely not. If you have a problem or a concern, you address that with the elders. Not wait till the elders come to you and say, you hadn't been here in 3 months, what's the deal? So the responsibility is to go to the elders, make them aware. It may be, I've got a problem that I need help with, that I need people to pray for me, whatever. It may be physical sickness. It may be, I've got a problem with the way some things are being taught here, from the pulpit or in Bible classes or whatever. And that's a concern and it's really eating at me. Well, don't let it just eat at you until you finally say, well, I guess I just need to go to a different congregation. The responsibility is to go to the elders and make them aware of the issue so that the elders aren't mind readers, so that they can then take any necessary action or help in any way that they can through